The weather is going to be foggy in the early morning tomorrow. That most likely means today is going to be my last day alive. I've accepted this. I quit my job so I could spend the time to type this all out. I wanted to leave a record of what happened to me, even though I doubt anyone is going to believe me. Even if one person does, I think I could rest easy. This all started years ago, when I was around 10. We had recently moved to the area, and I came from a big city, so the change to a small town was hitting me hard. The neighborhood kids could notice and took me under their wing pretty quickly. Travis and Gail were practically siblings. We all lived a few houses down from each other, so they would collect me to play in the woods or in the parks located pretty close to where we lived. I didn't know the trails very well. I didn't want to risk getting lost, and my two friends were kind enough to make sure one was with me at all times when we were in the woods. A day came we had been playing by a pond in the middle of the woods. We were getting hungry and agreed to go back to my place to wash up and get some snacks. While we were walking on the trail, an unusual fog started to roll in. It had been a hot day and the temperature hadn't dropped. The fog was unnatural and couldn't possibly be created by any normal reasons, but we all acted brave as if the fog wasn't scaring us. In a few minutes though, it was impossible to see the trail. The entire world had been covered in a white mist. I could still see the shape of Gale in front of me, but that was all. We should all hold hands so we don't get lost, I offered. All three of us wanted to act grown up at this point in our lives. We were ditching any hobbies we thought were for babies and not for our mature 10-year-old selves. But in that dense fog, we acted like the children we were, and none of us argued, taking each other's hands, forming a line. I took a hold of Gale's hand and I felt Travis's take mine. His hand was still cold and wet from playing in the pond and trying to catch fish with his bare hands. I wish he'd dried off, but I wasn't complaining. Slowly, we started to move in a line. I could still see Gale's fuzzy form in front of me. I didn't know how he could still see the trail, but I trusted her. If she noticed we were getting off the dirt trail and into the wood, I was positive we would either stop and wait the fog out, or turn back. This was a time before cell phones, so we couldn't call for help. We remained silent during our walk, each taking tiny scared steps and all breathing hard. I didn't understand how such a dense fog rolled in the middle of the day, and how it seemed to silence the entire forest around us, and why the wind was no longer blowing through the trees like it had been all day. The whole thing was scaring all of us, even though we would refuse to admit it to each other out loud. As we walked, I thought Travis was getting scared and panicking. His hand was starting to squeeze mine so tightly it hurt, like really started to hurt. He was a year older than me, but he shouldn't be strong enough to squeeze my hand so tightly. I should have told him to stop, but I honestly was too scared. I would rather his bone-breaking grip over not having a hold of someone in the dense white around us. I felt my heart starting to beat faster and stress coming down on my shoulders, clamping the muscles so tight I could almost not bear it. Then I heard it, sounds coming from the fog. At first I thought it was just normal bird songs, but when I focused, through the stress and the pain in my hand, I could hear it more clearly. They were echoing screams coming from the woods. Coming from so far away, I could barely hear them, but they were there. Only a few at first, but soon hundreds overlapping each other, filling up the silence, making my teeth chatter in fear. I tried to convince myself the sounds were either birds or foxes, but my rational brain wasn't having it. Gale, can you walk any faster? I want to get out of here, I begged, hating the whine that came into my voice. I'm going as fast as I can. I don't want us to get lost forever because of this fog. The voice that answered my request was Travis's. His voice was coming from in front of me. I could see that I was holding Gale's hand, and now that I squinted in the mist, I could barely make out Gale reaching towards holding Travis's hand. I froze in my tracks, causing Gale and Travis to stop as well. If Travis was in front of me along with Gale, then who was holding my other hand? I never should have stopped. If I just kept walking, we all would have made it out of the woods safe and sound. But I did stop. The hand holding mine squeezed so tight, I felt some bones break. And it was cold, like a hand of dry ice gripping onto me. It was so cold, it felt like my skin was burning. Because of how we'd been walking in a line, the thing holding onto me was behind me. When I stopped walking, Gail looked over to me, her face twisting in fear, and a silent scream when she saw what was behind me. I didn't look. I didn't turn my head. I only stared in horror as Gail let go of my hand and let out a loud scream that echoed through the fog, joining the ones in the distance, slowly getting louder and closer. She didn't just scream once. She screamed and kept screaming as if she couldn't stop. It only lasted a few seconds, but it felt like years had passed as she just kept screaming and tears started to flow down her cheeks. Even in the mist, I could see that her hand was raised up and empty while she was screaming. Then, from the fog, black hands darted out and took a hold of her. Hundreds from all directions wrapped her in their inky blackness and lifted her in the air before I could do anything. Before I could save her. Travis had been stunned at Gail screaming and didn't react to seeing her being swallowed up and taken. I couldn't save her, but I thought I could save him. My free hand shot out and found Travis. I grabbed a hold of his shaking hand and started to run. I didn't care where we were going, just that we were moving. My feet found solid dirt, so I knew we stayed on the path. I was aware that the thing had scared Gail to her death and was still holding my hand so painfully, and I was dragging it along and poor Travis had to run next to it. He saw what I was holding and screamed like Gail. He clawed at my hand trying to get free. He screamed and kicked at me, clawing and ripping my skin. But I knew that if I let go of him, he would be dead. I had to endure the pain Travis was lashing out and the pain of holding on to one of the creatures that had taken Gail. Since Travis was in such a frenzy, I don't think he heard Gail's final sounds. I did. I ran and left her behind. We had recently watched a zombie movie in which a man's head was pulled off. He was screaming, and while his head was torn, his vocal cords were stretched and his voice got higher pitched. We all thought that had been a cool touch, unaware that it was what would really happen. That was what Gail's final scream sounded like. I felt bile rising up in my throat, but I was too scared to stop and puke. I don't know how long I ran for. My lungs and legs burned. Both my hands hurt so much. One hand was for certain broken from the creature, and the other arm was bleeding, but I couldn't stop. If I let go of either hand, myself and Travis would die. I ran harder than I ever had in my entire life. Just when I thought my body would give out, I was suddenly blinded by sunlight. It happened so suddenly, it caused me to rip and crash into the ground. The creature that had been keeping a vice-like grip on my hand let go the moment the sun came. I let go of Travis in my fall. It knocked the wind out of me. I was gasping for air, but I had to turn around. I had to make sure Travis was safe. Forcing myself to sit up, still unable to breathe, I saw Travis on the ground, screaming and crying. His hand was covered with blood from where he attacked me. But we were alive. The fog was gone. We were out of the woods, and a few strangers who parked their car in front of the start of the trail came rushing over, trying to help. The police were called. Travis was sedated and couldn't be awake without going in a crying fit for months. I played dumb and traumatized. After all, who would believe us? In the end, a bear was blamed. They found Gail, at least parts of her. The police assumed a bear attacked us in the woods. They thought I had tried to save Gail, but had my arms torn up. They guessed I couldn't save Gail from the bear, so after I was injured, I grabbed Travis and got us out of there. And Travis was so traumatized by seeing his friend torn to pieces, he was placed somewhere that could help him. No one questioned why the scar on my hand was in the shape of a handprint. No one wanted to question such a strange scar. I had hoped that I could move on and forget the entire thing. Years passed, and with a lot of help, Travis was able to go home. He was an emotional wreck, but still alive. I was very proud of him, but never dared speak to him again, fearing it would remind him of that day. I lived a fairly normal life, aside from the scar on my right hand. The ones Travis gave me healed and faded. but the hand-shaped scar stayed. In fact, it grew with my hand. When Travis scathed me, his hands were small, so the scars stayed small. But the handprint looked like whatever had grabbed me was growing up with me. It never faded. The pain was always dully there as a constant reminder. I'd accepted I would always carry that scar. That as long as I stayed away from the woods and away from any fog, I would be safe. Until a month ago. I was trying to fall asleep. Sleeping was hard for me. I was on my back under layers of blankets, staring up at the dark ceiling, right hand on my chest. I had forced my eyes closed, trying to make myself sleep, when I felt it. A cold hand took mine. I grasped my hand over the scar it left behind years ago. My entire body froze. I held my breath. I kept my eyes closed, fearing if I opened them, the thing would take me away like Gale years before. I was so scared. Somehow, even more scared than when I had been when I was 10. If this thing could take my hand now, that meant it could do it at any time, even if I make it through the night. And it was so cold. So cold it felt like it was burning me where it touched. I don't know why I did what I did that night. Shaking from the fear and the cold, I raised my other arm. Slowly and fully expecting to be killed by moving, I pressed my luck and ever so carefully placed it on top of the cold hand that was gripping mine. Somehow, I figured if I was holding the creature's hand with both of mine, then maybe it might warm it? I can't explain my logic in the moment. I was scared and so very cold. Somehow, the cold became something I could bear. The creature's hand still held onto mine so tightly, I knew some fingers had been broken. I kept my eyes shut, fearing if I opened them and saw what Gale had so many years ago, other hands would come and take me. I just had to get through the night, I kept telling myself. If I could just get through the night with my eyes closed and holding this vile monster's hand, I would be alright. When I heard the birds chirping outside, it gave me hope. The few hours of night felt like I had spent an entire lifetime, stuck between life and death. I didn't dare open my eyes, no matter how much I was tempted. I wanted to get up and race out of the room. I wanted to be so far away from the situation I had been forced into. Finally, I felt the cold hand leave mine. I still gave it a few minutes before opening my eyes and looking around the room. The bed beside me had a cold, wet imprint of a person. I was going to throw away my sheet and sleep on the couch until I could get a new mattress. I decided on seeing the string wetness. My hand wasn't as cold as it had been the first time that creature had taken a hold of it, but it was bruised and at least 2 of my fingers were broken. Without changing, I went to the hospital to get it treated. I lied to the doctors, saying I fell off my bike. They believed me, not asking why the bruise was hand-shaped and on top of a scar. They either couldn't see the scar or they didn't care. When it was all said and done, I had 2 fingers in a splint. It hurt like hell, but wasn't as bad as I thought. Leaving the hospital, I wanted to take a walk to clear my mind. I already called into my job, so they weren't expecting me until my fingers healed. At that point, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was scared to death of the creature who came back that night, but I started to think I was alright. If I didn't let go or open my eyes, I'd be safe, right? Those seemed to be the rules. I had no idea how long I would be haunted by the creature. Maybe for my entire life, and I was in fact not at all alright with that idea. That day I was just wandering aimlessly when I felt it. Another cold hand take mine. I panicked, shutting my eyes before something felt off. It was too small. It was so cold where it touched my skin, but it wasn't gripping my hand in a vice grip. The hand did not belong to the creature that had scared me. I knew that there was a chance of hundreds of these creatures hiding in the fog and shadows, but I never expected a second one interacting with me, other than if I broke the rules and they came to take my life. I stood in front of a closed store, eyes shut, trying to think of what to do, when I felt the hand start tugging, trying to get me to walk forwards. Judging by the size of the fingers wrapped around mine, it was a child's hand. I couldn't risk walking in the streets with my eyes closed. I would get hit by a car fairly fast. I took a huge risk and opened my eyes. I kept them upwards, but I could still see where I was going. Out at the very edge of my vision, I could see a dark shape, an inky blackness about as tall as my waist. The creature hadn't noticed me opening my eyes. I mentally changed the rules. As long as I didn't look directly at them, I would be fine. Then I quickly questioned that line of thought. If there were different creatures, did they have different preferences? Could I look at one and not get ripped apart? Did it all depend on which one approached me? I had to think of that later. The creature at my side was getting impatient, so we walked. When I walked by people on the street, they didn't give me any double takes or even seem to care about the strange creature walking beside me. Either they couldn't see me, or I was having a mental break. That was very possible, but I had to put that mental note off into the back of my brain to consider once I got rid of this monster. I let it guide me around the city, being very careful not to get a good look at it. It was short, so it was a bit easy for me to keep it out of my line of sight. After hours of what felt like aimless walking, we stopped at an abandoned-looking factory in the middle of nowhere. We had to go through a hole in a wire fence to get to it. The old bricks were strained from years of rain and weather. Most windows had been broken. Kids had used the area for hangout, to drink and spray paint any available surface. There were warning signs about trespassing, but I doubted the building had an owner that cared about enforcing it. When I stopped in front of the rundown building, I felt 2 taps on back of the small fingers. Then the cold hand was gone. I would like to think 2 taps was a thank you and the small monster was a polite one. But it really could have meant anything. I was just forcing myself to think of the most pleasant idea to chase away the fear that made my knees shake the entire way back home. Collapsing in the bed the moment I got home, I expected to be visited by another creature. That night, none showed, but I also didn't get any sleep either. The hand started to appear to me a month ago. I think by my count, I've had at least 30 come to me, dragging me to locations. Some short walks, some very long. The small hand was the nicest experience I had out of all of these encounters, and I quickly found out these creatures were using me. That abandoned building burned down the day after I brought the creature to it. Inside had been 3 homeless men when the fire started. One lived for a few days after getting out, before the fire consumed everything. He claimed that something had tried to hold him down, small hands trying to keep him in the flames. I admit, it took me about 2 weeks before I started to make the sickening connections. People died or disappeared where I brought those creatures. When I knew the horrible truth, I decided that I couldn't live with myself for what I had done. I hadn't been able to save Gail, and now I was causing others to lose their lives. 3 days ago, a creature took my hand. I was at home in the kitchen making coffee. I hadn't been able to eat or sleep. Coffee was the only thing that kept me alive the past few days. I had just closed the fridge getting a milk carton, and I felt the cold hand silently slip into mine. I knew this one. It fit perfectly over my scar. Despite how scared I was, I wanted this to happen. I wanted this creature I brought out of the fog to be the one who killed me. I'd made up my mind, but it was still so hard to force myself to turn my head towards where I thought the creature was. I wanted to see it. I had to see it. It still took everything I had just to turn my head. Something happened I didn't expect. The creature let go. Before I could see it, it left. I stood, stunned and frozen, alone in my kitchen. I started to look around the room, even though my hand was now empty. I honestly didn't know if it was pure luck that the thing decided it was going to leave, or I did something that scared it away. Maybe it was angry I took my death literally in my own hands. That it wanted to decide when I died, and not the other way round. Then I noticed something else strange. I stared down at my hand and found the scar that the creature had given me was also gone. That dark thing really had left me. You may be thinking this was a good thing. I somehow scared it away, but have you ever reached for something soft? Something like a stress ball or something you knew would be pleasant to pick up and hold? Either it being smooth in texture or maybe just petting some sort of animal you love, or even holding a loved one's hand. That feeling of expectation of holding something, of having something in your hand, it's an empty feeling in a way. When the scar was gone, my hand was left with an empty feeling of needing to pick up and hold something. The feeling you get just before you pick up something, but multiplied by an unmanageable amount. I was so desperate to have my hand holding something, holding that cold other's hand once more. I even considered cutting my own hand off, thinking it may cure my urge. It was the only time I cried over all of this. I thought of losing my hand, and losing any chance of having my hand in someone else's made me sob in a way I never had. I didn't even cry like this when Gail died. Tomorrow is going to be foggy in the morning. I'm going to go out looking for that dark creature. I may not find the one I'm looking for in the fog, but I'm positive I'm going to find something. I know this means my death. I'm scared, of course, too scared to even sleep or eat. If I go through with this, that's it. I'm not getting a second chance. But my hand feels so empty and so very, very lonely. Abigail disappeared 7 years ago. It was her 13th birthday. My husband and I spent 2 weeks planning it, making sure everything was perfect, down to the colour of the streamers. It's our belief that turning 13 is a special event, a transition from childhood to adulthood. None of us expected it to go horribly wrong. I admit, I'm partially at fault. I suggested we take a walk through the woods nearby. They were safe after all, and the weather was cool enough not to overheat. I remember hearing a sound. I can't recall what it was, but I turned my back for only a moment to look. When I looked back, she was gone. My baby was gone. I didn't panic straight away, thinking she must have hid behind a tree or something. But after not finding her in the middle area, I panicked. I ran back to the party and found my husband. The guests erupted in worried whispers upon seeing me run into my husband's arms. But soon, everyone was getting ready to search the woods for Abigail. The cops came soon after and helped search as well. When it got dark, everyone went home, much to my husband's dismay. I convinced him it was for the best. The cops had questions, of course. It was quite strange for a girl to disappear in mere seconds. The search lasted for 2 weeks, before the police filed it away as a missing person. My husband was destroyed by the news, as was I. It took a long time with the help from therapists to get us where we are now, holding down jobs with another baby on the way. Today would have been her 20th birthday. Even if my husband hasn't, I've accepted Abigail is dead. So when the phone rang an hour ago, and Abby's distinct voice came from the other end, I was surprised. Although similar, it had aged and matured. Her words are muddled in my memory. I hung up after I realised what was happening. I think my guilt is coming back to mess with me for forgetting what I did to Abigail 7 years ago. It's foggy, but I can remember an intense feeling. Anger? Jealousy? I don't know. It doesn't matter now. I know where she's buried. Out in the woods, under a tree she used to climb. So this was not my daughter, no matter how much I want it to be. To distract myself, I'll share one of my favourite moments. It was shortly after she was born. I was holding her hand when I suddenly felt tired, so I passed it to my husband. They looked so at peace. All of his attention was focused solely on her, like a loving father. I went to bed right after, content with knowledge she was in safe hands. I've had some issues lately. There isn't really a start, more so there's an impending end. It's because of my cousin. She's the eccentric type, always collecting crystals and other nonsense I don't believe in. We were out shopping for our grandma's birthday. She's a stickler for antiques, so we were in that area of downtown. There was this shady place tucked behind a crystal shop. The sign was a piece of wood with Ryuna's Myth and Magic painted on it. And no, it doesn't escape my notice that it sounds like a nerd's paradise. Anyway, she spotted the place and insisted we check it out. I'm a bit of a pushover. The shop was disoriented and crowded. One misstep, and you knocked over a 500-year-old magic vase. She was absolutely enamored with it. There was no one at the register, so we took our time observing everything. What happened next was the catalyst, and completely avoidable had my cousin been born with more than 3 brain cells, lest she was not. She decided to take an item. As no one was at the front, she assumed it would be okay to just take something. What she took, I have no clue. I don't even know she took anything until much later. Several days passed, and I got a call from her in hysterics about a nosebleed. Simple, natural, right? Well, this wasn't an ordinary nosebleed. Instead of red blood, it was bright neon orange. And she knew it was blood because she tasted it. Don't ask, it's not worth it. I urged her to go to the ER because neon blood is not normal. But we've already established she isn't the brightest star in the sky. She confessed about the item she took, how that's what must be causing this. I dismissed it and told her she should really just go to the hospital. Well, almost right after I hung up, I sneezed. And what came out? Neon yellow blood. I tasted it. My family's disgusting habits aside, I actually went to the ER. They did some tests and I have a tumour in my nose. Don't know if that's even possible, but it's a thing. They told me to come back in a month to check on it. I let my cousin know what was happening, hoping that would convince her to go. Surprisingly, she listened. Now it's been a week, and I'm worried. A bump has appeared between my eyes. I'm not knowledgeable about tumours, but that can't be normal. I went back and it had doubled in size. I called my cousin. No answer. I called several more times. No answer. This was worrying. She was one to answer on the first ring. I drove by her house to check in and make sure everything was okay. The door was unlocked and the lights were on, so I didn't bother knocking. It was eerily silent. I checked the rooms as I walked through them, and then I was in her bedroom. I was disgusted by the sight. Neon orange blood was everywhere, on the floors, the walls, the blankets. Under the blankets was a lump. I didn't want to uncover it, but I did. She lay there, barely breathing. Her skin was tight and wrinkled like she'd aged 30 years. Her once bright red hair was white and brittle, and the worst thing was the faint orange hue to her. She radiated neon. She died in the ambulance. They still don't know what caused it. I think I'll end up the same way. I fear ending up like that and having my son find me the same way I found her. I did something dumb. I cut open the spot the tumour is in and attempted to cut it out. It was incredibly painful. The only thing keeping me going was the image of my body in that state. I did get it out. I took a sewing needle and stitched it. I planned to go to the hospital to have them do it. But a few hours later it was back, and somehow bigger. I'm going to die, but I'll be damned if it's like my cousin.
Five years ago, I moved into a rental with my friend, Maisie. Maisie and I met our first year of college. We lived on the same dorm floor. After knowing each other for a couple years, we decided to look for a home close enough to our university without being right on campus. Both of us really liked the idea of moving somewhere more rural with lots of privacy. We both had a fascination with nature and a distaste for most people. After several weeks of scouring listings, we finally found the one. It was a little 2-bedroom house. It was only 20 minutes from campus, but it was surrounded by forest. It had a lovely screen porch on the front, complete with a handmade swing. The monthly rent was very doable for us, and we contacted the property owner immediately. She was a sweet older woman named Tabitha. Tabitha and her husband had been renting the house out on and off for 15 years. We met up with them. They seemed genuinely kind and welcoming, so we agreed to rent the house. Maisie and I were completely moved in within the next 2 weeks. It was great. We didn't have the noise of the bustling streets on campus. The spring air smelled like wildflowers, and watching the rain from the porch was one of the most relaxing things to do after class. After a month of living there, Maisie came home with a surprise. She'd bought a metal detector. Her plan was to take it into the surrounding woods and see if we could find any lost treasures, as she called them. We sat out the next morning. At first we didn't find anything too exciting, some old bottle caps and soda cans, tabs mostly. A time or two we dug up a nail. Just as we were about to head back to the house, Maisie shouted to me. "This is going to be something good," she yelled, pointing to the spot just under the beeping machine. "This spot feels lucky." I dug at the dirt for a bit until we found what looked like a coin. It was silver coloured and roughly the size of a 50-cent piece. Maisie picked it up. "Huh?" she said. "The markings must have been worn off." She turned it over in her hand and made a face. "Ew, what is that?" I looked at the coin in her palm. On one of its faces, there was a symbol drawn in some sort of reddish dried sludge. It looked almost like an eye. While it was gross, we both figured we would wash the coin clean at home. We took it back, and Maisie went to work at the bathroom sink. A while later, she came back with the freshly cleaned coin. "What is it?" I asked her. She pursed her lips. "Not sure. It looks like any markings or engravings kinda eroded. Who knows how long that thing was in the dirt?" Maisie was much more excited about our find than I was, so I relented to let her keep the coin in her room. She kept it in a jewellery box. We were pretty tired from our day of treasure hunting, so we cooked some frozen pizzas in the oven and spent the rest of the evening binge watching some of our favourite reality shows. Trouble started the following morning. We both had classes around 9 a.m, so we'd ride together and get breakfast through a drive-thru on the way. To make it on time, we'd leave at 8:15. It was past 8 and I hadn't seen her come out of her bedroom, so I got worried that she slept through her alarm. I walked into her room, expecting her to still be tucked in bed. She wasn't. Instead, she was still wearing pyjamas, standing in front of the jewellery box with the coin in her hand, just staring at it. She didn't even notice me come in. When I said her name, she didn't even move. I had to walk over and gently shake her shoulder to get her to look at me. "What are you doing?" I said. "We have to leave in 10 minutes. Get dressed." Maisie shook her head like she was coming out of a daze and furrowed her brow. "Sorry, I was just looking at it, and I guess I lost track of time," she mumbled. After that, she got dressed. Luckily, we still made it to class on time. That whole day, though, she kept bringing up the coin. When we were together, she rattled on about it. When we were in different classes, she spammed me with texts. Even some of our mutual friends complained to me that they couldn't get her to talk about anything else. When we got home that afternoon, she disappeared into her bedroom. It was a bit odd, but I had a lot of assignments to work on, and I was honestly a bit tired of her by that point, so I went into my room too. After finishing my homework, I went out into the kitchen. The lights were out. Maisie hadn't come out, and it was her night to cook dinner. I was annoyed, so I barged into her room. This time, she had a bedroom light off and was sitting at her desk. A single candle was lit in front of her, and she was using the flame to illuminate the coin in her hands. She was humming under her breath as she turned the coin over and over, transfixed. "Maisie?" I whispered. She jerked my direction, and I froze. The candlelight made it look like there was a strange reddish glow in her brown eyes. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice tense. "It's your turn to make dinner," I said. Before I could even take another breath, she'd crossed the room and into my personal space. "Can't you see I'm busy?" she snarled. "Get out!" I backed up and she slammed the door in my face. I heard the door lock. I stood there for a few minutes, trying to process what happened. Maisie wasn't the type to lose her temper. Sure, she got mad like everyone else, but she tended to be more passive-aggressive. She never yelled. Something must have really upset her. I ended up making some pasta for dinner. I put the leftovers in the fridge with a note saying Maisie could have them if she wanted, and then I went to bed. The next morning, I got up and ready for class. Maisie had the day off, so I figured she was still asleep. When I grabbed a water bottle from the fridge, I saw the leftover pasta still sitting on the shelf. Maisie probably hadn't left her room last night. I started to get worried. I thought maybe she had gotten some bad news about a family member, or was extra stressed about midterms coming up. That day, while in class, I decided I would plan something relaxing for us to do that night. I made some reservations for Maisie's favourite restaurant and ordered tickets online for a new movie she'd mentioned wanting to see. When I got home later that night, I saw that the living room light was on. Maisie had come out during the day, but when I checked, I still saw the leftovers inside the fridge. Maisie was never the type to skip meals, and that scared me. I made my way down the hallway to her bedroom. Halfway there, I stepped on something cold and squishy. I looked at the bottom of my sock and saw something pinkish stuck to it. I grimaced and flicked it off. When I got to her room, I saw the door was ajar. I was relieved that it wasn't locked this time. I gently pushed inside. All the lights were off, so I turned on my phone flashlight. What I saw still burned in my memory to this day. Maisie sat hunched over in her bed, wearing only a tank top and pyjama shorts. Her hair was unbrushed and a mess. There were scarlet stains all over her bed. I followed them up towards her body and gagged. Maisie had her package of raw ground beef ripped open on the bed and was scooping it into her mouth with her bare hands. She ate like a starved animal, chewing loudly with bits of the meat falling from her open mouth to land between her legs. I involuntarily let out a startled squeak. Maisie's head shot up and she glared at me. My knees faltered when I saw her eyes glowing a deep ruby. She moved to all fours and actually growled at me. My feet started working again and I took off, running for the front door, and I could hear her at my heels. I managed to get outside and made a beeline for my car. I tried the handle, but it was locked. I'd left my keys inside my purse on the kitchen counter. I cursed and turned around, prepared to run a different direction, but came face to face with Maisie. She was taller than she'd been a day ago, close to 7 feet. Her eyes were wider, and even in the dark, still shone crimson. She opened her mouth and ran her tongue over her lips. Her teeth were all jagged and sharp. She wrapped her right hand around my throat and smirked. "You have 2 options," she said. Her voice was deeper and raspy. I somehow felt each of her words vibrate down the hand she had on my neck. "You can join me and know this power." Maisie leaned forward and pressed her face to my hair, sniffing me. "Or I can make this simple and devour you now." "Maisie?" I started, but she tightened her grip on my throat, choking me. "What is your choice?" I shook my head and tried to break free, grabbing at her arm. She suddenly released me and banged a fist on my car, leaving a dent in the hood. "Wrong answer," she snarled. My legs gave way and I slid down to the ground, trembling. I scrambled to crawl beneath her legs. She grabbed both of my legs and dragged me out. I flipped onto my back and started kicking wildly. She paid no mind, instead looming over me. Bloody drool dripped from her lips and landed on my forehead. Maisie opened her mouth wide, aiming to bite my throat. I braced myself for the pain, when a sudden noise came from the pitch-black forest. It was a guttural, feral cry. It echoed and carried through the trees and sent a chill up my spine. My adrenaline spiked enough that I felt dizzy. Maisie let go of me and took a step back, looking in the direction for a sound. My vision got fuzzier as I watched her lope off past the tree line. Then it all went black. I came to the next morning, still lying next to my car. I went inside and cleaned myself up in the bathroom. I knew I had to move out. I didn't want to risk staying too long. I spent that day packing both mine and Maisie's things up in boxes. I rented a hotel room for a week and stayed there at night. I let Tabitha know that I was leaving early. I cleaned up as best as I could and forfeited the security deposit for what I couldn't fix. Over the next few days, I came up with a story. I told everyone that Maisie had a breakdown and ran away to join a cult, and that I didn't know how to contact her. I donated her belongings to some thrift stores and found myself an apartment on the edge of campus. I spent a lot of time after trying to process what had changed Maisie into that monster. I determined that it all started when she found that coin in the ground. I was glad I hadn't handled it myself or had anything to do with it. Who knows what would have happened if I did? It wasn't until several weeks later, when the nightmares began to subside, that I realised the coin had been inside Maisie's jewellery box when I donated it.